Hello, everyone. So, what I have is a really good and interesting speech for all of us. Since the early 1700s, law enforcement has been around, and that started over in England. Now, with the start of that, there was use of force from the very beginning till now. It has evolved over the years, and it has become something very prevalent within the public. And everybody sees pretty much what goes on, whether it's somebody recording what happens with the police or the news sees it and puts it out. Well, I would say the use of force is something that needs to be talked about. And that's where I'm going to begin. Now, I'm going to start off with an interesting definition. And the definition I have is force, which is an influence that causes motion or action. Well, now let's think about it. Force is all around us, whether it's physical, brought on by ourselves, or brought on by someone else. Now, the definition of use of force is conduct that invades another's interest or personality. Now, I agree with that very heartedly. As I said, we bring it on upon somebody else, or someone else brings it upon us. What I really want to say is the use of force is always there, and it's necessary during an arrest. Now, the opposition will tell you that use of force when arresting someone is not needed at all, which I highly disagree with. Anything negative is always put out by the news. And they're always saying, oh, look at this. The police are using brutality upon this person, this and that and the other. Well, do they show everything? If you look into it, no, they don't. They don't always show everything. That's how the news makes the news. There are different types of use of force within law enforcement. Now, it starts off at the very basic with officer presence. And then it goes to verbalization, empty hand control, less lethal methods, and then lethal force. Lethal force is at the very top of the use of force continuum. That is pretty much if anybody is in danger, whether it's the criminal, the public, or even the officer themselves. Police presence just by itself can actually deter a lot of criminal activity. Just being known can change a lot. I mean, really, a lot. I have a lot of friends in law enforcement. I'm actually getting hired on by a police department. So I've had a lot of talks with people. I've seen a lot of stuff. And just the officer being there is more than enough to deter a lot of crime. Each department has their own use of force policy. Pretty much the number one rule with law enforcement use of force is use only the amount of force necessary to make the end of the arrest. And once resistance stops, use of force stops, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's just how it goes. You learn your policy. It's like your Bible. Because if you don't know it, you can get wrapped up in it. And it can do a lot of damage, not only to you, but to your family as well. why we need the use of force. Now, each arrest is different in its own. No arrest is the same. It's never going to start the same. It's never going to end the same. That is when the discretion of the officer is used. I mean, the officer has discretion to use it in any way, shape, or form, but there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things. It also comes down to being ethical. That's just how it is. Because of all this, this is actually how the use of force came to be. Tennessee versus Garner. That is the first case, the actual first known case to come about to have use of force put in play. Now, what happened during Tennessee versus Garner was back in 1974, down in Memphis, Tennessee, police responded to a call of a prowler inside, which is known as a burglary in law enforcement. So when the officer arrived, he saw somebody inside. Didn't know if the person had a weapon, wasn't quite sure of what was going to happen. So to that officer, they thought that there was imminent danger. So the suspect took off. The officer wasn't sure what to do. He went to go climb over a fence, and the officer shot him in the back of the head. Now, people will say, oh, well, that wasn't right, this and that, the other. Well, police have a family to go home to as well. It could have been as easily as the person had a gun, no matter what kind it was, could have turned around and shot the officer. They didn't know. In this case, the officer was found that deadly force was allowed because it was shown as self-defense. Middle of the night, someone's lurking around, attempting to burglarize a home. They were inside of the home. I agree with it. Everything that we see and hear is not always correct. That's why we have to look into it. That's why a use of force policy was put in place to protect the public, protect law enforcement, and also to protect criminals. Because once the criminal is in the custody of law enforcement is responsible for the criminal. With all of this, with the statistics, personal experience I've had during training, the use of force isn't a negative experience or police brutality. It's a necessity. And I think we all need to look into it next time we see something about police using excessive force. And that's how we need to look at it. Not just, it's exactly right, but is there more to it? And is this all they're saying?